Get out of my car and walk. Maybe the rain will wash the lies off you." That was the last thing Grace heard before the tires screeched, and her own mother-in-law left her in the middle of nowhere, 8 months pregnant, in a storm. What Martha didn't know was that decision would cost her everything. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in karma. Now, let's dive into the story. If I had known marrying your son meant becoming your punching bag, I would have walked away while I still had shoes on my feet. Grace didn't say those words out loud, but they sat heavy on her heart like the baby in her womb. At 8 months pregnant, she had learned how to breathe through contractions, smile through insults, and bite her tongue until it bled. Living under Martha's roof was like living with a storm in a cage. Her mother-in-law's eyes followed her every step. If Grace swept the floor, she missed a corner. If she cooked, it was either too salty or too bland. And if Daniel praised her, Martha would scoff and say, "She's fooling you with that belly. Just wait, you'll see her true colors soon." Daniel tried. He really did. He loved Grace and believed she was the best thing that ever happened to him. But his mistake was thinking he could love his wife and still keep his mother comfortable in the same space. On this particular morning, the sky was already gray. The weather didn't lie, and neither did Martha's face as she came down the stairs in her silk robe, eyes cold and calculating. "Grace," she said, her voice sharp and sugarless. "You and I are going for a little drive today, just the two of us." Grace paused. "A drive?" Martha's lips curled into something between a smile and a smirk. "Yes, I think we need to clear the air between us. Fresh air is good for the baby, isn't it?" From the kitchen, Daniel looked up. "You sure you're okay to drive, Mom?" "I'm not dead yet," Martha snapped, her eyes never leaving Grace. Grace hesitated, something in her gut tightening like a warning. But she nodded slowly. "Let me get my sweater." As she walked to the bedroom, she didn't realize it was the last time she'd feel safe in that house. Grace sat silently in the passenger seat as the car rolled through the drizzle. The wipers swept away the rain like slow, tired sighs. Martha hadn't spoken since they left the driveway, which, in itself, was a warning. The silence didn't last. "So," Martha finally said, tapping the steering wheel with one long, crimson nail. "Remind me again, what exactly were you doing before you met my son? Working in some dusty salon?" Grace kept her eyes forward. "Yes, I was managing a hair studio in town." Martha scoffed. "Managing? You mean sweeping hair and flirting with customers until one of them got you pregnant?" Grace flinched, but said nothing. Martha glanced sideways, lips curled in disdain. "You think I don't see it? The way you wrapped yourself around Daniel so fast. What was it? 3 months before you announced you were pregnant. Trapped him before he could think straight." "That's not true," Grace said softly, her voice trembling. "We were in love." "In love?" Martha laughed bitterly. "Girls like you don't fall in love, you fall into strategy. You saw a good man, well brought up, with a decent job and a family home. And you thought, yes, I'll have that one. I'll even throw in a baby as insurance." Grace turned to her. "I've never lied to Daniel. I've never asked him for a thing. And yet here you are," Martha sneered, "eating under my roof, sleeping in my son's bed, parading around like some innocent victim. Please, I've known women like you all my life. Polite on the outside, poisonous underneath." Grace's hands tightened on her lap. She tried to speak, but couldn't find the words. Not because Martha was right, but because she was viciously wrong, and Grace knew defending herself would only feed the fire. Martha shook her head, disgusted. "You even got him to stop traveling for work. Told him to stay close, didn't you? Afraid he might meet someone better?" "I was having complications with the pregnancy," Grace said quietly. "The doctor advised that I avoid stress." "Oh, stress." Martha snapped. "You think I didn't carry children? You think I didn't face stress? My husband died, and I raised Daniel alone. I didn't have anyone babysitting me. I didn't have salons and sob stories. I survived. And I'll be damned if I let some soft, manipulative little girl tear my son's life apart." They reached a fork in the road. Instead of turning back toward town, Martha veered left, down an unfamiliar, narrow path flanked by trees and silence. Grace looked around. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Martha muttered. "We're almost there." Daniel stood in the kitchen, staring at the window. The rain hadn't let up. It tapped against the glass in a rhythm that mirrored the tension in his chest. He'd kissed Grace on the forehead before she left, and told his mother to go easy. He meant it. But he also knew that telling Martha to go easy was like asking fire not to burn. He poured himself a cup of tea, hoping the heat would calm the cold knot in his stomach. Since marrying Grace, peace in the house had become a daily negotiation. His mother, once proud and composed, had turned sharp and suspicious, especially after the pregnancy. "She's not the girl for you, Daniel," Martha had said too many times. "Too fast. Too perfect. Things that glitter like that always turn out to be glass." But Daniel loved Grace. He saw how she winced through back pain, but still cooked for his mother. How she took insults with grace, even when they bruised her soul. He had tried to be the bridge. But lately, it felt like he was the rope being pulled from both ends. The front door creaked open. Daniel looked up quickly, but it wasn't them. Just the wind. He checked his phone again. No message. No missed calls. They'd been gone over an hour now. His heart knocked a little harder. He tried to brush it off. Maybe they were finally having a decent conversation. Maybe this was the breakthrough moment he'd prayed for. Two women he loved, finding common ground over tea or shared laughter. He chuckled nervously at the thought. "Yeah, right," he muttered. "And maybe pigs fly." Still, he chose to believe the best. Daniel had always been the optimist in the family. He didn't see storms coming. Not until the thunder cracked the sky. Unbeknownst to him, that thunder had already started. Because while he stood hoping for peace in the warmth of his kitchen, his mother was steering Grace towards something cold and merciless. A plan already formed. A trap already sprung. Trees blurred by as they drove further away from the neighborhood, further from safety. Grace stole glances at Martha. Her face was unreadable, lips painted perfectly, hands firm on the wheel. "Where exactly are we going?" Grace finally asked. "A quiet spot I used to go with Daniel's father," Martha replied. "Before life got noisy. Before certain people started pulling Daniel in all the wrong directions." The word stung. "I never pulled him anywhere," Grace whispered. "He chose me." Martha chuckled dryly. "Darling, men think they choose. But women like you. You plant the idea, dress it up, and wait for them to take the bait." Grace said nothing. Her hands were cold. Rain lashed harder against the glass as they drove deeper into a wooded stretch. No houses. No lights. No signs of life. Grace looked around, heart pounding. "This doesn't look like a safe place to stop." Martha didn't answer. She just pressed harder on the accelerator. The road narrowed as the tires sliced through puddles, spraying muddy water on either side. Trees leaned in close, their dripping branches brushing against the car like ghostly fingers. Grace's pulse quickened with every bend they took. Unfamiliar, winding, and eerily silent. "Where exactly is this place?" she asked again, her voice almost lost beneath the sound of the rain hammering the windshield. Martha didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed fixed on the road, knuckles tightening around the steering wheel. "Not far now. Just a little further." Grace looked out the window. No street signs. No passing cars. Just thick woods and the occasional rusted fence swallowed by weeds. Her stomach turned, not from the baby this time, but from something deeper, something darker. She glanced down at her phone. No signal. "Of course. I think we should turn back," Grace said gently. "Daniel will be wondering where we are by now." Martha scoffed. "Daniel's at work. And if you were really worried about him, you wouldn't be dragging him away from his dreams with that child." Grace blinked, hurt. "This baby is his family." "No," Martha snapped. "I'm his family. I was his first home. And I know when someone's pulling him away from everything he was meant to become. You came into his life like a shadow. Fast, quiet, and hard to get rid of." Grace's chest tightened. "I love your son. I've never done anything to hurt him." "You trapped him," Martha hissed. "With a pregnancy he never planned and responsibilities he didn't deserve." The car veered sharply to the right, jolting Grace in her seat. She clutched her belly instinctively, breathing harder. "Martha, please, slow down." But Martha didn't slow down. Instead, she pressed the accelerator harder, as if trying to outrun something, or someone, or maybe her own conscience. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the twisted branches overhead. The rain was no longer gentle. It was a war, loud, violent, and unforgiving. Grace wiped the fog from her side window and caught sight of a sign half buried in weeds. It was bent, broken, and unreadable. Whatever road they were on now wasn't even a road anymore. Just gravel, mud, and dread. She turned toward Martha. I'm serious. I don't feel safe. This place isn't good for me. Or the baby. Martha's face remained cold. Maybe a little discomfort will help you reflect on the mess you've made of my son's life. Grace's eyes widened. What? But Martha didn't elaborate. She just drove further into the unknown, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, the forest growing thicker with each mile. The world behind them disappeared. No GPS. No rescue. Just two women, one breathing heavily in fear, and the other silently preparing to do something she could never take back. Grace placed a trembling hand on her belly. Please just take me home. Martha finally responded, but with silence and a long, steady glare into the storm ahead. The car slowed. Not because the road had improved, it hadn't, but because Martha had reached a decision. Grace noticed it instantly. The shift in speed. The cold resolve in her mother-in-law's face. Her heart thudded like a warning drum. Then, the car came to a full stop. Right there, in the middle of nowhere. No houses, no shelter, just trees, shadows, and the pounding of the relentless rain. Martha. Grace's voice was shaky. Why are we stopping? Without answering, Martha unbuckled her seatbelt, opened her door, and stepped out. Rain soaked her instantly, but she didn't flinch. She walked around the car with mechanical calmness, stopped at Grace's side, and yanked the passenger door open. Get out, she said flatly. Grace's eyes widened. What? I said. Martha repeated, louder this time. Get out. Grace froze. You can't be serious. It's raining. There's no one out here. I'm 8 months. You should have thought about that before dragging my son into your life with your crocodile tears and your fake innocence. Martha snapped. You want to play the victim? Then walk like one. Maybe the storm will help you remember who you are. Tears mingled with raindrops on Grace's cheeks. Martha, please. I haven't done anything to deserve this. You're not thinking clearly. Oh, I'm thinking clearer than I have in years, Martha interrupted. You want Daniel? Fine. Earn him. Walk back. Let him see you for what you are, desperate, manipulative, and alone. She reached in, unbuckled Grace's seatbelt, and yanked her arm. Martha, stop. Grace gasped, clutching her belly. You're hurting me. I should have done this months ago, Martha growled. You should have never been part of this family. With one final push, she shoved Grace out of the car. The pregnant woman stumbled, falling to her knees in the mud. Her scream was swallowed by thunder. Grace looked up, soaked, trembling, confused. Why are you doing this to me? Martha leaned down slightly, face unreadable beneath the curtain of rain. Because some weeds don't belong in gardens. Then she turned, walked back to the driver's seat, and slammed the door shut. The engine roared to life. Grace stood up, her legs wobbling beneath her. She reached out. Martha, please. Don't leave me. But the tires spun. And just like that, Martha drove off. Grace stood frozen as the red taillights disappeared into the storm, swallowed by distance and cruelty. The forest echoed with silence, except for the wind howling through the trees and the sharp sting of rain against her skin. Her body trembled. Her belly tightened. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Martha, she cried into the emptiness. But there was no answer. Only the storm, and the growing fear that she might not survive it. The sky split open with a deafening crack, lightning flashing like a warning from above. Grace flinched and staggered back as thunder rolled across the hills, shaking her to her core. Her clothes clung to her like wet rags, heavy and cold. Her breath came in short gasps, and every step through the mud felt like dragging chains behind her. Martha, she whispered, though she knew no one could hear her. No one was coming back. The road had vanished behind her. The forest closed in with every blink. Trees blurred in the rain, and the gravel beneath her turned to slippery sludge that sucked at her shoes. She placed one hand on her swollen belly, the other stretched out blindly, trying to keep balance. The baby kicked again, sharp, desperate, as if reacting to her terror. I know, baby. I know, she whispered, voice trembling. We'll be okay. I promise. But her legs were failing. Her strength was bleeding out into the storm. With a gasp, she slipped and fell to her knees. Pain jolted through her side. She cried out and tried to rise, but her body betrayed her. Too cold, too soaked, too exhausted. She looked around wildly. Nothing but trees. No passing cars. No light. No path. No shelter. Her tears had no chance against the rain. They streamed freely, mingling with the storm water as her sobs turned into raw, breathless cries. "Help!" she screamed. "Somebody please." Only the wind answered. She crawled forward, digging her hands into the mud, pulling herself inch by inch like a soldier lost on a battlefield. Every root became a trip hazard, every gust of wind another slap in the face. Her coat had come undone, exposing her soaked maternity dress to the cold. Her shoes were half off, filled with water. She was shivering, but the panic in her heart burned like fire. And still she didn't stop, because inside her was life. Inside her was a heartbeat that hadn't failed her yet. Suddenly, her foot struck something hard, a narrow ditch on the side of the road. She tumbled forward and landed with a cry. Pain shot up her back and across her belly. She lay there for a moment, stunned, staring up into the dark sky, eyes blinking against the rain. And then headlights. Distant, faint, but real. Grace forced herself to sit up, waving both arms in the air. "Help, please." The lights grew brighter, slower, and just as her vision began to fade, just as the cold started numbing her limbs and the baby inside her rolled uneasily, the vehicle stopped. A door opened. Feet splashed through water. Then a soft, elderly voice, strained with concern. "Dear heavens, child, what are you doing out here?" Grace opened her mouth, but no sound came. She fell into darkness, but not alone. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Please, stay with me." Evelyn's voice was trembling as she knelt beside the soaked and shivering woman crumpled in the ditch. Her hands moved quickly but gently, brushing mud from Grace's face, checking her pulse. Her own coat was already off, wrapped around Grace's belly. "God have mercy," she whispered, seeing the shape of pregnancy beneath the soaked dress. Grace's lips were pale, trembling, barely able to move. Her eyelids fluttered. Evelyn gripped her hand. "Can you hear me, child?" A faint nod. Then silence. "I've got you now." Evelyn stood, her joints aching from the rain and age, and hurried to her old but reliable station wagon. She opened the back door, then returned and wrapped both arms around Grace's shoulders, bracing herself. "We're going to do this together," she said. 1, 2, 3. With all the strength she could muster, she lifted Grace halfway and dragged her carefully toward the car. Grace groaned softly, barely conscious. Evelyn eased her into the back seat, adjusted the coat to shield her belly, and slammed the door shut. She got into the driver's seat, hands shaking as she turned the key. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. "Hang in there, baby girl. Just hang in." Evelyn's old fingers tapped across her dashboard for the emergency clinic card she kept for just in case. She never thought she'd use it for a pregnant stranger in the rain. She grabbed her phone, barely a signal, but enough to dial. "St. Luke's Clinic. How can we help you? I found a young pregnant woman, unconscious, soaked, freezing. Looks like she's been out here a while. I'm on North Hollow Road, heading your way now. Bring her in immediately. We'll be ready." Evelyn hung up and pressed the pedal, wipers dancing across the glass. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, where Grace lay curled in the back seat, lips moving ever so slightly, as if whispering to someone who wasn't there. "You hold that baby tight, you hear?" Evelyn said. "We're almost there." Minutes felt like hours. The roads were slippery, the turns dangerous, but Evelyn never let go of the wheel. She drove like a mother, like a protector, like someone who knew that saving one life might mean saving two. Finally, the warm glow of the clinic sign cut through the rain. Nurses rushed out with a gurney the moment the car stopped. Evelyn jumped out and waved them over. "She's in labor," she said, "and she's terrified." They opened the door and gently pulled Grace onto the gurney. Her eyes blinked open briefly, and for the first time, she saw Evelyn clearly. "Who are you?" she whispered. Evelyn leaned in, brushing wet hair from Grace's forehead. "Someone who still believes in kindness," she said softly. "Now go give birth to hope." As the doors to the clinic closed behind them, Evelyn stood in the rain, a stranger no more. The smell of antiseptic filled the small hospital room, mingling with the soft coo of a newborn wrapped in a clean white blanket. Grace lay propped against the pillows, her face pale but peaceful, her body weak yet alive. Her hands trembled as they held the tiny girl to her chest, a girl with warm brown skin, a tiny nose, and a faint dimple in her chin. Grace traced her daughter's cheek with one finger, as tears slid quietly down her face. "You're here," she whispered. "You made it. After everything." The rain, the betrayal, the pain. Life had bloomed anyway. A nurse peeked in through the door and smiled. You've got a strong one. Both of you do. Grace gave a faint smile in return. But there was no one waiting in the hallway. No husband pacing. No flowers. No proud father holding her hand. Only silence. Evelyn arrived later that evening, holding a thermos of warm soup and a soft blanket. How are we doing? She asked gently, settling into the chair beside the bed. We're okay, Grace said. She's perfect. Evelyn leaned forward and smiled down at the baby. You've got fire in your eyes, little one. Just like your mama. Grace laughed softly. She came into this world like a fighter. She had no choice. Evelyn replied. You both were thrown into a storm. There was a pause. Then Evelyn added. Would you like me to help you call someone? Your husband, maybe. Grace's smile faded. She looked down at the child in her arms and shook her head. No, she said quietly. I don't want him to know yet. Evelyn was surprised, but she didn't push. You sure? I don't know what he believes, Grace whispered. I don't know what she told him. But if he loved me, truly loved me, he wouldn't have let his mother treat me like that for so long. And he definitely wouldn't be silent now. She looked out the window at the gray sky. I need time. I need peace. And I want to raise my daughter in a place where no one calls her mother a mistake. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then you stay here as long as you need. I've got an extra room in my house. It's small but warm and quiet. Grace turned to her, stunned. You've already done so much. Evelyn waved it off. Don't insult me by refusing. I raised 3 sons alone after my husband died. The house is too quiet now anyway. Grace looked at her, eyes welling with tears. Why are you being so kind? Evelyn smiled. Because years ago, I was abandoned too. And if someone hadn't picked me up, I wouldn't have made it either. Grace looked down at her sleeping daughter. I'm naming her Hope, she said. And for the first time in days, something inside her began to heal. The door creaked open just after sunset. Daniel looked up from the couch, phone still in his hand, brows furrowed in concern. His shoes were by the door, jacket still on. He hadn't left his spot since morning. He had called Grace's number 5 times. No answer. He'd texted twice. No reply. Now, finally, the front door opened, but only Martha stepped in. She was soaked, hair flat against her scalp, silk blouse clinging to her skin. But she didn't look panicked. She looked composed. Daniel stood. Where's Grace? Martha let out a dramatic sigh, removing her heels and setting them neatly by the wall. She left. Daniel blinked. What? She got out of the car, Martha said, walking past him. Said she couldn't take it anymore. Said she was done pretending. Daniel grabbed her arm. Wait. What do you mean she left? In the middle of the road? In this rain? Martha turned to him with a weary expression. She was angry, Daniel. Hysterical. Accused me of trying to control her life. Told me she felt trapped. Before I could say a word, she opened the door and stormed off. Daniel looked at her in disbelief. And you didn't go after her? What could I do? Martha threw up her hands. I called out, but she didn't listen. She just kept walking down the road. I drove ahead thinking she'd calm down and come back. I circled the block twice. Daniel's jaw clenched. That doesn't sound like Grace. She wouldn't just leave, not without her phone, not in her condition. Martha's expression hardened just slightly. You don't know her as well as you think. Maybe she's not who you believe she was. He stepped back slowly, heart pounding. You left her in the rain, while pregnant? I didn't leave her, Martha said defensively. She chose to get out. I tried to talk her down. He stared at her, trying to read her face. It was calm. Too calm. She could be hurt, he said, running a hand through his hair. She could be out there, scared or worse. I'm sure she's fine, Martha said, moving toward the stairs. Girls like her always land somewhere soft. That line struck Daniel like a slap. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. I'm going to look for her. Martha's voice stopped him. And if you don't find her? Daniel hesitated. She's gone, Daniel, Martha said coldly. She made her choice. Don't waste your life chasing someone who didn't want to stay. He didn't respond. He just walked out into the same rain his wife had vanished into, unaware that the woman he trusted most had just shattered his world with a lie sharp enough to leave scars. The rain had slowed by morning, but inside Daniel, the storm was just beginning. He sat at the dining table, untouched coffee cooling in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair uncombed. The clock ticked loudly in the background, each second mocking him for not knowing where his wife was. Her phone was still off. Still no messages. Still no trace. He'd driven for hours the night before, retracing every possible road, stopping by every nearby gas station and even the police station. No one had seen her. No one had helped a pregnant woman in distress. How could she vanish without a single witness? Daniel looked at his own phone and typed, "Find my wife Grace Akins," into the browser, as if Google could fix what his heart couldn't explain. He clicked to call her number again. Ring. Ring. Voicemail. "Hi, it's Grace. Leave a message." He ended the call before the beep. What was he even supposed to say? That he believed her would never leave like this? That he feared she was gone because someone had pushed her to the edge? His eyes drifted to the staircase, and the woman at the top of it. Martha stood in her usual cream robe, holding a cup of tea, face as unreadable as ever. "You need to rest," she said. "Driving around all night like a madman won't bring her back." Daniel didn't answer. He kept staring at his phone. "She's not answering because she doesn't want to be found," Martha added. She said what she needed to say, and she left. Some women do that when the fantasy runs dry. Daniel looked up slowly. "She's 8 months pregnant, Mom. She loved this baby more than anything. And maybe that's why she ran," Martha said with a shrug. "Maybe she realized she wasn't ready." Daniel's fists tightened around the edge of the table. "You really believe that?" Martha took a sip of her tea. "What I believe doesn't matter. She's gone." Daniel stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "No, she's missing. There's a difference." He walked to the kitchen, pulled out his phone again, and tried one more time. Ring. Ring. Voicemail. He stared at the screen, then scrolled through her last messages. None of them hinted at anything unusual. Her last text to him was simple. "Be safe. Don't forget my coconut buns," smiley face. Daniel closed his eyes. That wasn't someone who planned to disappear. That was someone who thought she'd be home by evening. Something wasn't right. He picked up his car keys again. Martha leaned on the stair rail, sighing dramatically. "You're going out again?" Daniel didn't answer, because deep in his gut, something was unraveling, and he wouldn't stop until he found the thread. 3 months had passed. 3 long, bitter, and sleepless months. The baby was likely born by now, Daniel often thought. Somewhere out there, his child had taken their first breath without him. After that night, he never saw Grace again. No calls. No texts. No sightings. It was like the earth swallowed her whole. A missing persons report yielded nothing. The police suggested she had left voluntarily. There were no signs of foul play. No one questioned Martha's story. Except Daniel, quietly, deeply. He never forgot the cold in her eyes that night. The way her story never changed, never cracked. But his guilt kept him frozen. Until today. He was pulling into the driveway after work when he saw Mr. Lawton, their old neighbor, out front trimming his hedges. A quiet man in his 70s, Mr. Lawton mostly kept to himself. A widower who'd lived in the same house for decades. Daniel waved out of courtesy, but Mr. Lawton stared. Then, slowly, he set down his shears and walked over. "You got a moment, son?" he asked. Daniel nodded, surprised. Mr. Lawton looked around, then leaned in. "I've been meaning to speak with you, but I wasn't sure if it was my place." Daniel frowned. "About what?" "The day your wife disappeared." Daniel's heart stopped. Mr. Lawton scratched his neck, voice cautious. "I was on my porch that morning, fixing my gutter. Rain was starting. I saw your mother and your wife leave together in that red car of hers." Daniel nodded. "Yes, they went for a drive. My mother said Grace got out halfway and ran off." "That's not what I saw," Mr. Lawton said quietly. "I saw them arguing. Not yelling, but tense. They stopped near the edge of the woods. I couldn't hear what was said, but then, your mother got out, walked to the passenger side, and pushed your wife out of the car." Daniel froze. "I remember clearly because I dropped my wrench when I saw it. Your wife fell into the mud. It was pouring by then. She looked confused, frightened. She tried to speak, but your mother just turned and got back in the car. Drove off. Left her there." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Are you sure?" "I'm old," Mr. Lawton said, "but my eyes are still good. I should have come to you sooner, but I didn't want trouble. I figured maybe she came home later. But when I saw your wife never returned." He trailed off. Daniel stepped back, hands trembling. "She was telling the truth," he whispered to himself. "She didn't leave me. She was left." His knees buckled onto the porch steps. All this time, all these months, he had believed the woman who gave birth to him, and lost the woman who gave birth to his child. Do you know which direction they drove? Daniel asked suddenly. Mr. Lawton nodded. North Hollow Road. But son, that place is nothing but woods. Daniel stood, chest rising with urgency. He knew what he had to do. The lie had lived long enough. Now he was going to chase the truth. The house was small, tucked behind rows of tall pine trees at the edge of a quiet town Daniel had never heard of. The address came from a clinic record he'd tracked down with quiet desperation, after piecing together the last known route Grace had taken that fateful day. Now he stood at the edge of a weathered porch, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. The door creaked open before he knocked. And there she was, Grace. She stood in the doorway, wearing a simple blouse and faded jeans. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, and she had flour dust on her hands, probably from baking. But none of that mattered. She was alive, and in her arms, wrapped in a pale yellow onesie, was a baby with soft curls and Daniel's eyes. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Grace blinked, stunned. Her arms tightened instinctively around the child. Daniel. He nodded slowly, his voice cracking. I found you. She didn't move, didn't smile, didn't cry. Her eyes held years' worth of pain in a single, wordless gaze. Then footsteps approached behind her. Evelyn appeared, drying her hands on a towel. She looked from Grace to Daniel, sensing the weight in the air. So, you're the husband. Daniel nodded. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn studied him for a long second. Then she stepped aside. I'll give you two some space. Grace didn't invite him in, but she didn't close the door either. Daniel stepped onto the porch. The baby stirred and let out a tiny sigh, her eyes fluttering open. And in that moment, he saw his past, and everything he had almost lost. Grace's voice was steady but cold. Why are you here? Daniel swallowed hard. Because I finally know the truth. She said nothing. I should have known something was wrong. I should have fought harder for you. I let her lie to me. Grace looked down at the baby. Hope doesn't know her father. I want to, he whispered. If you'll let me try. And for the first time in months, she didn't look away. Daniel sank onto the porch bench, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I don't even know where to begin, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I looked for you everywhere. I wanted to believe what she told me, but something never sat right. Grace leaned against the doorframe, arms wrapped around baby Hope. Her silence weighed more than any words. I should have questioned her harder, Daniel continued. I should have known you'd never leave without a reason, without telling me. You were always the one holding everything together, Grace, and I let you fall apart alone. His voice cracked. I failed you. He looked up, eyes brimming with tears. I failed her too. Grace's eyes softened slightly as she looked down at the baby resting peacefully in her arms. I drove every road she could have taken, he went on. But I was blind, not to your love, but to hers. My mother, she twisted everything. And I let her. A tear slipped down his cheek. If I could go back to that day, I'd get in the car with you. I'd pull you out of the rain and never let you go. But I can't. He stood, stepping closer, slowly, cautiously. All I can do now is ask for the impossible. A second chance. Not just as your husband, but as Hope's father. Grace said nothing for a long moment. The baby let out a soft yawn and shifted gently in her arms. Finally, Grace looked at Daniel. Not with rage, not with pity, but with the weary strength of a woman who had endured more than anyone ever should. I didn't need a perfect man, she said. I needed a brave one. Daniel took a shaky breath. Then let me be brave now. Let me earn back what I destroyed. And for the first time, Grace didn't turn away. Grace stepped back inside the house, leaving the door slightly open. Daniel stood outside, unsure if it meant go away or come in. Then her voice called softly. You can come in, but only for a moment. He entered cautiously, eyes scanning the humble room. It was small but warm, with signs of new life everywhere. Baby bottles on the counter, a folded blanket on the sofa, a hand-knit hat on the windowsill. A home, not grand, but full of healing. Grace sat on the couch, Hope resting gently against her shoulder. Daniel remained standing, unsure of where he belonged. I've had a lot of time to think, Grace said. About you. About her. About everything that happened. Daniel nodded, guilt still thick in his eyes. I deserve all of it. The silence. The distance. Grace looked up. If I let you back into our lives, it won't be the same. I know. I can't rebuild with someone who's still tied to someone who destroyed me. Daniel's throat tightened. I'll cut every tie. Then say it, Grace said calmly. Say her name, and say she will never come near our daughter. Daniel's voice shook, but he didn't hesitate. Martha will never be part of our family again. I swear it. Not near Hope. Not near you. Grace looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Then maybe, she said quietly, we can begin again. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. And for the first time in months, the weight of loss started to lift, just a little. Martha pushed open the front door with her usual flair, expecting the familiar smell of lemon polish and the sound of Daniel's footsteps upstairs. But the house greeted her with silence. No lights, no music, no voice calling, "Hi, Mom." Just stillness. She frowned and stepped inside, setting her purse on the console. "Daniel?" she called, glancing toward the kitchen. "I picked up your vitamins from the pharmacy." No answer. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor as she moved through the house. Then she saw it, right there in the living room. 3 bags, packed neatly. Her bags, her suitcase, her tote, her cosmetics case, all zipped, all waiting. On top, a folded envelope with her name in Daniel's handwriting. She stared at it, disoriented, then slowly picked it up. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the flap. It was short. "This house is no longer yours to poison. You left someone in the rain, and now it's your turn to stand alone." Daniel. Her knees buckled onto the couch. She looked around the empty home. No framed photos of her anymore. No scent of cooking. No signs of Grace. No baby giggles. No family. Just echoing silence. For the first time in her life, Martha was truly and finally alone. And so, the storm that one woman started ended with her sitting alone in the very house she once ruled, surrounded not by love, but by silence. Martha lost everything, not with noise, but with quiet. No slamming doors, no shouts, just a letter, a packed bag, and the memory of a rainy road she wishes she could forget. But miles away, in a smaller house filled with warmth, Grace cradled her daughter with peace in her heart and strength in her spine. She didn't rise through vengeance. She rose through survival. Daniel learned what every man must, that protecting your mother's pride can cost you your family's future. And Evelyn, she stayed, becoming more than a rescuer. She became family. And Hope, the little girl born after the storm, would grow up not knowing the pain her mother endured, but the strength she carried through it. Because in the end, the rain didn't wash Grace away. It washed her free. And let this be your reminder. The rain that soaks others unjustly often returns with thunder. So choose your storm wisely. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear that karma never forgets. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and never, ever be the one who closes the car door on someone who trusts you.